Hey guys, it's Yusuf, and today we're doing part three of the three-part series of the IT Help Desk Power App. So if you haven't watched part one and two, I suggest you do so you can follow along. Today we'll be wrapping up this app. We'll be adding the form, a couple little tweaks here and there, some filters, and then we will be good to go with this app. I definitely have some super annoying dogs, so let's just get them out of the way. Come here, Jeff. There you go, buddy. And then apologies for any background noise, having some work done in the bathroom, so we'll just have to work through it. All right, so if you guys, as a refresher, this is where we've left off with the app. Really like kind of what we've come up with. We have a nice gallery, we have a little summary up top, how our filters on the left, and like I said in the past videos, you can add way more filters into this gallery over here. I just made it simple, but you can have things like, received today or completed today, all those kind of things. And, if I were to pick something else as another page to add in my navigation besides just filters, maybe I would have an analytics page that would have a Power BI report embedded or something. So definitely a lot of things you can do here. So now, one little thing I did notice that kind of threw me off for a minute is when you have, so here in the summary card we have completed today, which is 0, and if I do preview it, it disappears. But I just want to let you guys know, if you did notice that, it's only blank in the preview, but when you actually play the app, you'll see it'll show 0. So in case you saw that and were wondering, you are fine. You will see it in the actual app. Also, one thing is, in a past video, we were talking about SharePoint as a data source. And one of the things I said, there was a 5K limit. And I wanted to clarify that 5K limit is if you're in SharePoint and you're viewing a list, there is a 5K threshold limit, but SharePoint itself can hold some ridiculous 30 million records. But that also has to factor in the file size of that SharePoint list. So if you have a SharePoint list with a bunch of columns, heavy data, it's going to take up the storage, which would then reduce the amount of records you can have. I will share a link that kind of goes over it from the Microsoft site, but I just wanted to clarify that point for you guys. All right, so let's get in. As I look at this, kind of my first thing that I want to add is I put this white top header up here, and we'll definitely have a button for adding a new record. But I'm still gonna want something here, and what I'm envisioning is having a search bar. So although you can filter the tickets down, we want to add a little search bar here so that users can actually look up, let's say, who, the customer that submitted the ticket, or maybe just the title, which would be, if this was a Power Automate where every time someone emails a help desk email, it creates a record, it would be the subject line. And so what we'll go ahead and do is insert an input, text input. And I'm just going to go ahead and center this guy, make this 11. Now, because we're doing this on the fly, normally I would have a collection of all my font sizes, colors, and all of that, so that I'm not trying to remember everything. It also saves you a lot of time too, in case you change your mind on, let's say, if I've been using size 11 font throughout my app, but now I want to do 14. Having a collection would let me update in one place so that it would update everything else. You could also use components. So I just want to throw that little reminder in there, but because we're just doing this kind of on the fly, we're winging it a little bit. So I'm going to take out the border. I want the default to be blank. I will do a little hint text, and I'll just say search requester or issue. Now, nomenclature is so important as you get into business process. You really want to establish that nomenclature within your process, your company, whatever it is you're building that for. If you refer to them as customers, then put customer. If you refer to them as requester or employee, all that kind of stuff, just make sure you're consistent throughout your app and that it aligns with your overall nomenclature for that company. And I do have a lot of space, so I'm just going to make it a little wider because it'll look better, and then just make sure this stays at 40. There is a default hover of this kind of blue, which I'm super not into, so we're just going to go ahead and change that. For this, so my border radius kind of default is usually like a 4, but for this search, I'm going to make it 0, which we're not showing a border, but when we hover, it does show a border. And I'm going to change that hover color. I'm going to use the background I used here. I think it'll look a little nicer than that default blue. So I'm going to do F4, F4, F4. So now it looks a lot cleaner. All right, and so then I need to make it so that I can search an item in here. And also I'm going to just add a little ... I feel like that. I don't know why I like that, but it looks good. All right, so let's update this gallery. So in order to search 2 columns within this collection, I'm not going to want to use an if statement, to say like, if it's blank, show everything. And if it's that, like, I'm not going to want to do that. What I'm going to want to use is a search function. So I'm going to do search. My text is going to be, what is this called? Text input 1. Dot text. And I'm going to want to search 2 fields. So I'm going to want the submitted by name as well as the title. And so now what can happen is I can look up, let's say, Emma. I'll see that. Or I can put SharePoint. And anything, any title that has SharePoint in it will show up. So this makes it a little better for your IT team to be able to drill down to a record they're looking for. And I really don't like the whole focus border thing, to be honest. I think it's cool on forms sometimes, but for this case, it's not going to work. So I'm just going to make my focus border thickness 0 because I don't really want to see that. All right, so now we have a search filter. Let's add a button. So I'm going to go over here. Let's line it up. And I want it to be 40 on the height, which is good. Okay, cool. My font size, I've been using 11 for pretty much everything. I may actually, you could go a little larger for a button. I'm going to just make it 11 and see how we like that. I'm going to call this new ticket. So again, as I mentioned before in videos, just be obvious in any kind of button. There's no, if I would have just put new, yes, someone who's been using this app for a while will know that it means to add a new ticket, but always keep in mind new users. A new user should be able to just jump in here and be like, cool, I get it right away. And I think that's kind of like my overall, like all philosophy on UX is being able to just jump into an app, figure it out, know what I can do, like at least the basics. Working in like business process where I'm helping agencies select the perfect tool for their process, whether it's financing, billing process, project management. I don't like to do the tools where I have to sit through a demo where they tell me how to use it. I like to use the tools that I can just jump into and have a pretty much a good sense of how to do something. And that's just how your app should be. Your app shouldn't require like this whole training process on how to use it. It should be pretty much the basics should be clear for someone who just jumped in, opened it. They should have a pretty good idea what to do. And that's why, like, when it comes to buttons, like, those should be pretty obvious. That was my little rant. So I'm going to take the border out. No need for a border. You can see I use all caps. When it comes to all caps, I think it's okay for buttons. Anything that's like less than like 2 words, I think it's fine. But once you start doing anything with more than 2 words, it's actually harder for a end user to read anything in all caps. So you wouldn't want to make like where I have like search requester or issue. I wouldn't do that in all caps. It's harder for a user to quickly read that. You don't have to do it obviously like in a button. I'm just gonna like use this as a style. If you kind of follow different UI designs like Apple versus Microsoft, you'll see some will use all caps on buttons and the other will use lowercase. Totally up to you. I'm just going to do this because I think it looks cool right here. I'm going to change this blue into the blue we've been using. By default, that hover color is still going to be that blue. So what I can do is when I go to the hover fill, I'm okay with it being the 20% difference. I'm just going to change this to button1.fill. So now when I hover, it just goes a little darker. And then I'm going to make this border radius match what I've been using, which is 4. And I want this, if I want this button to pop a little bit, I can add a drop shadow. I can just copy and paste one of these, which this is why components are so great. So you don't have to do that every time. You can just hit add. And I did share a component that I put together for you guys on using a drop shadow and making these rectangles. So it's a lot easier so you guys don't have to do all the extra work. But for now, since we're doing it manually, let me just go ahead and adjust this to match. So the width was 160, height 40. I'm going to do this X and Y axis of 4 and 4. Totally eyeballing this, which is like not super ideal. This needs to be 8. And this needs to be, since I made it 4, this needs to be 78. And bring that button to the front. All right, cool. So now we have a drop shadow there. I'm just going to group these together. So now let's go ahead and just make the screen for the form. Do form screen. When thinking about accessibility, it's important to know that the screen readers are going to read what you label the screen as. So you're not going to want to make it all one word saying form screen. You're going to want to write it as it would be said out loud. So form screen, I'm doing with a space so that if it's being read, it would come out correctly. And insert a form. Connecting to help desk. And I'm not going to touch anything with this just yet. Let me go ahead and update that new button. So it's a group. I'm going to make on select, new form, form 1. And then we're going to do navigate. Whoops. And I want this, I could definitely put the form onto this same screen and do something where maybe it just covers like half the screen. But you want to limit the amount of controls you have on one screen. The less controls, the faster your app. So what I'm going to do is make this, the form's going to be on a separate screen, but we can have it transition sliding in, so it kind of has that feel of a one screen app where it's just, an item is sliding into it. So for navigating, we're going to navigate to the form screen, and I will do cover. So when I click this, it's having that form kind of covered this way so that from right to left, that way kind of feels like, a more modern app. And so for this, let's clean up a couple things. As I'm thinking about the layout, we want to make this have multiple use cases. So this could be an IT person clicking on a ticket because they want to edit the status or make a note or assign themselves to it. Also, there's the option to add a new record because app is meant for the IT user. The only reason they'd be having the option to add a new ticket is because they received a Microsoft Teams message where someone's like, hey, can you help me reset my password or whatever the case is? And they want to add the ticket to their system of record so that they can show, hey, this was the volume of stuff that comes in. Happens all the time in IT where people just try to cut the process and go directly to an IT person. So we want them to have that option to add some stuff to their daily list or tracker. So we have to keep those two kind of purposes in mind. This is going to be solving for adding a record as well as editing a record, which would allow the IT people to quickly assign themselves or change a status. So what I'm thinking for this is we'll make this background white for the form, and then for the screen, have it match the background we used in the home screen, which is at F4, F4, F4. And then we'll add a header, which I can just copy this. But again, that's why components are great, because I wouldn't have to do that every time. So just paste that in. And then I'm just eyeballing it, but I would definitely want to be consistent on my margins and the sizing I'm making everything, but we're just going to kind of eyeball it right now. All right. Cool. So then here, if I'm thinking about my IT person, I kind of want them to be able to quickly make those updates while seeing the info. So if I'm thinking of importance, most cases, it's not adding a new record, it's going to be viewing an existing ticket. So I'm going to want to put the most important fields for that IT person at the very top. So I'm just going to go to edit fields, and I'm going to go to assign name. Let's do status. And let's see, we have assigning status. And I'll go to do priority. Even though priority is a field that the customer would be entering, there are times where someone might say, this is high priority. And if you've ever worked in IT, most people think everything is high priority or ASAP when it's not. And so giving IT team that ability to update that when needed is super helpful. So we'll do assign name, status, priority, as well as I added a notes field in that data source that we created. And this would be for them to put a note. My thinking here would be if we have to order a new keyboard, I can put a note in here saying keyboard's been ordered, will be arriving on X date. So a little helpful for the IT team. So now that we have, those are going to be the 4 main fields for them. So it's every field by default is locked. So I'm going to unlock it. I have assigned name. I'm just going to call this assigned. Now, what I did is I created this column in SharePoint as a text field. You can use the person field. You can, have it also be a text field, like kind of what I've done. The reason why I went with text field is because it's less complex. So SharePoint gives you all these great features, but from my experience, having a less complex column like numbers or text are way better. You can create other SharePoint lists, so to like complement that or use a lookup. So for example, this assigned, I can have a SharePoint list that's just my IT team, so that when I'm filling in this text field, it's based on a lookup. Definitely a possibility. I find that it helps eliminate any delegation issues and just keeps it all overall like a lot cleaner. So if I'm trying to like patch this like text field, I could do a search, like a text search property where I'm looking up maybe based off of Office 365 to look through my Active Directory. In this case, I'm going to make it a drop down where the only options are based on that help team collection I made. That collection was based off of people who are already assigned, but like I said, that's just for this case, but I could have just made that a completely separate SharePoint list where I just add IT people to it. So because I'm using this collection, what we'll do is just add a drop down here. And I'm going to make my options, the collection help team that we created. And I'll go ahead and delete this, which you'll get a bunch of errors when you delete those because there are items referencing it. So I'm just going to go ahead and back out of those. And I'm going to make this just line up. I can see here, to make it line up perfectly, that the Y is at 49 and the X was at 30. So just 30, 49. And I'm going to go ahead and update everything to just get rid of that kind of blue color that we have going on. And then so because I have a drop down here, I'm going to want to make sure that this card updates properly. So for the update field, I'm going to say drop down one dot selected dot name. And for the default, perfect, this item dot assign name. So now I've assigned status, same situation where this is a number column, but I'm going to want to make it a drop down. So let me just clean this up, make these black. I'm going to remove this guy, clear these. Whenever you have any kind of controls within these cards in your form, hold on, sorry. Jack, come here. Come here, buddy. These dogs are very distracting. Okay, you go over there. Come on, Finn. You too. Just let me get through this video, okay? All right. So whenever you have these cards, by default, you're going to have the title of the field, so a label text field. You're going to have the input text property. You're going to have a label for the error message, and you're going to have a icon for kind of the asterisk if something's required, like you see here in title. If you're not using all that, you have to just remove it. Otherwise, it's just more data and properties slowing down your app, so no need to keep it in there. So let me add my drop down. I'm going to remove this star visible and error message because I'm not going to be using it. I already remembered that these X and Y values were 30 and 49. And just go ahead and make this border black, background black, font 11, which I don't think I updated over there. So let's update this. And let's update it here. And now, all right, so we have, whoops, under my status, I have this drop down. Since I'm using a number field, what I'm going to want to do is put the text values in here of what the status would represent. So we have new, oops, on hold, and completed. And default, actually, so we have the new, on hold, and completed. And then what will be updated, we can't use a text field because it's a number column. So what I'll do is on the update of this card, I'm going to use switch. So switch, this was drop down 2, which this is why it's important to relabel everything so you can quickly reference it, but we are on the fly. So based on what's selected, I'm going to use switch value to say if it's new, I want it to be 1. If it's on hold, I want it to be 2. If it's completed, I want it to be 3. And then as the default of this dropdown, I don't want it to be just by default the first one. I want to, if that works for if I'm adding a new record, but if it is a existing record, I want to show the status that it actually is. And so I'm going to say switch this item dot status. If it's 1, I want it to be new. 2, I want it to be on hold. 3, whoops, completed. That way, if I pull up a ticket that's on hold, it'll say on hold by default there. All right, priority. I don't actually recall if this was a number or a text field, so let's just find out. Oops. Let's open this SharePoint list. All right, so priority is text. So we'll go ahead and we're gonna do the same thing. We're making this a drop down. So we update the border of the parent to black. This font size 11. The color to black. This to 11. Going to delete the extra stuff. I'm just not using it for this. If we were, I would keep it, but I'm not. And I know it's been X and Y 30 by 49. Definitely better to, link it to the label and everything. Just trying to keep this consistent for now. So I'm using it just by manually entering it in, but you can definitely keep it so that it's linked to wherever the label is. Actually, I don't even know why I made that line up on the X and Y axis because we're just deleting it. So let me just put this drop down, update the color, font size 11. Delete this over here. 30 by 49. Get rid of this error, and what I'm going to make it is drop down 3 dot selected dot text. Oh, sorry, not text, value. And my options will be low, medium, high. I can make this black. Did it not go? All right, I missed the border color. There you go. And I want to make sure the default is correct. I'm going to do switch like I've done with the other two. And this item dot priority. Actually, sorry, I did switch before because we were doing numbers to text. Since these are all text, all I have to do is this item dot priority. And so now that we've kind of created these three, let's just make sure there is no error before we keep going on. To do so, I'm going to select my gallery, make the on select, edit form, form 1, navigate, form screen, cover. Fingers crossed we got everything set up correctly. That doesn't look promising. So I'm going to do for the item, not ideal. I'll get into how to fix this, but I'm going to put gallery active tickets dot selected. So now when I do it, Let's do this on hold one so we can make sure that it says on hold. And you'll see we've got, actually, I do want to make sure that that was assigned to Dina. So it isn't, so I can right away see that there is an issue here. This is blank, so it shouldn't be showing Dina. So I'm going to be doing, I'm going to go ahead and add to this collection for my help team. Copy this. I'm going to make this blank, color, gray. And that should fix that issue. Let's see, run on start. Let's go back to that on hold unassigned ticket. Cool. And so we can see that it's unassigned. I can go ahead and switch it. On hold works, priority works. Perfect. So now let's finish this up a little bit. The notes, let's unlock. Now for the notes, I'm going to make this the full width of this form. So I've done a 3-column form. So we'll do full width. So what I'll do is width, form 1 dot width. And I'll go ahead and make the height. Let's make this like 300. Sounds kind of good. Actually, pretty aggressive. Trusty calculator, because I do everything by 8s. So let me just find a good number. Let's try 160. I can definitely make this. I can put a formula in to auto adjust the height based on the amount of text. I'm not going to get into all that. So I'm just going to manually adjust it. So first let's make this border black, this 11 and black. Make this font 11 as well. I need to update this to be multi-line, not single line. And just making sure there's nothing else weird. Cool. Nothing else really needs to happen with this. I'm just keeping it, wrapped. So now the idea here is this is really like the IT team's portion. And so I do want to kind of have that feel a little more separated. So what I'll do, it's going to throw off the design a bit, but I'm going to first, I think, as you can see, this is touching this input is touching the border line. I'm going to go ahead and add 8 to this height. Actually, I'm going to make it 96 because 96 is a better number, which updates everything else to 96. And then I'm going to make the background that blue I used on the home page. And yes, it looks a little awful with all the black, so I'm going to go ahead and make the font. Let's do, just thinking about the design for a minute. So the chevron color, taking it out. And so this part is the background of it, which I made to be transparent. The left, I'm going to make it Let's do that blue we've been using. My font color should be black. The border, I don't think we need a border. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And we'll just update this text to be white. And we'll do the same here. No, I definitely think we need more space here. This is not very equal to what we've been doing. So let's go ahead and make this height 104. Again, I'm always doing things by eighths, which is why I'm kind of just spitting out these sizes. Let's get rid of the border. And just like a separate note, what I always like to do is if you're, regardless if you're building apps for the company you work for, even yourself or for clients, components, yes, put a structure to everything so I can reuse different properties and adjust it on that component, which will adjust it everywhere else. That saves a lot of time and keeps everything uniformed. But I also I put so many instructions to everything. So like if I have something where I'm doing a form and I'm adding all these custom properties, have some kind of wiki instructions that you can have. It doesn't have to be in your app or anything. It could be a separate document, but always keep that in mind. So if you're like, as I get into this where I'm like, all right, take out the border, make the background this color, change the font to this, outline that. So I always try to make sure everything I build is built in a way that another Power App developer can jump in, know what's going on, know how to add something, because we don't want to limit users. The whole point about this is having a low code app means that there's more people who can help collaborate and build Power Apps. And so we want them to be able to be on the same page. We want them to feel limited. So if you're building something for a client, you don't want them to feel like they have to call you every time they want to add a field to a form. They should be able to have the instructions in place that they know how to add it and know exactly what should be updated in it. Again, one of my very many rants. All right, did we get rid of that border? We did. Cool. Notes, same thing. It's going to be that same color because I'm really highlighting that this is the IT teams section. There is a little bit of a weird alignment here, but I just want to make sure that it's not just a preview issue, because it very well can be. So I do think we're just like in a preview issue. I will definitely make sure. Actually, let's just do this first. The width of this, 1127. So I'm divide that by 3. So what would be a better way to do this is currently each card is at the 375 width, which I'm pretty into. So if I do that times 3, I get 1125. So I'm going to go ahead and make the form width 1125 so that it is equal, and that then fixes that issue there. All right, now we can go ahead and add the customer info. So for title, we have title, description. What I'll do is we will go ahead. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Well, so whenever you have forms, another important little UX best practice for forms is the width of that actual field they're filling in. So if I look at title, that width, it should be somewhat relevant to the amount of characters they can enter. So I would want to have some kind of character limit based on how many characters they can put into like a subject email. Also, just nice so that like you're not getting a title that's like a full story. You know, you want it to be very brief and under like 6 words. Um, so I'm not going to make that the full width, but what I'll do is have title, and then next to it we'll do submitted by, and then we'll allow the description to take up the full width size. So now we'll unlock this, knowing that this card will take up 2 spots since it's a 3-column form. We just do 375 times 2 to get to 750. I guess I could have done that math in my head, but 750. I do want to be consistent about the height here, so I'm doing 104 for my height. And then let's edit this form so that submitted by name is right after title. Description, I'm going to make the full width. And I'm going to have to make this description field a little longer, so I'm going to do it to match what I did for the notes, which is that 160 height. I made this height 97, but it should be 96 because I want to stay in that 8 number, making everything divisible of 8. And just like I did with the other one, make it multi-line. Now I can do, kind of like I said, there are formulas I can put in to adjust the height and everything. I'm not going to get into that for this video, but you can definitely do that. And then I'm really trying to aim to make this a all-in-one, like one form view without having to do a bunch of scrolling. So the last thing I have that I really actually need in here is, let's see, attachments. Everything else would be hidden. So let's go ahead and put attachments right below description. Unlock it. And we'll do, let's do, just seeing where I have like room to shorten this a little bit. So I'm actually thinking let's take this 160 point height down a little bit. Let's do 120. Let me make this 80. So height 80 for the input. I want this to be 120. Oh, we're gonna have to make it a little smaller than that. 72. So actually, let's do 128. It's really all I keep doing is just like playing around with these numbers over and over again. All right, and I'm into that. So now let's just update these so we have them looking clean. So we have 11 and then make this 49. I will want to show that this is required. So adjust it to the 11 and make it red. All right, and then we're just doing the same thing over and over again, cleaning up the font sizes and colors. Okay. Now let's edit description. Okay, so we're just updating this description field. Now, this is very exciting, but this is the process we go through to edit each little section until Power Apps gives us a little update to let us mass do this. Wink, wink. All right, so now raise this just a little bit. Lower this a little bit. There we go. Definitely use margins, like I said. If you're consistent with your margins and use that kind of like margin guide we used earlier, your app will look so much better if everything's super consistent, but we are just kind of doing this by eye right now. This is gonna bother me. So with let's see, why aren't you? Aha. So we're a little inconsistent here. It should be 30. So that's 30. That's 30. My width is 375. If I'm going based off the templated 30-point margin, then I should be at 345 for the width. sorry, not 30, 60. So we're at 375, so these should be 315. I can easily connect this to the card to make that, but I'm just doing it manually right now. And now we have it all equal. All right, submitted by. So for this, again, the flow would be someone emailing a help email distribution list or group that would then create a record in the SharePoint list or whatever data source you're using. So submitted by name being text. What I'd want to do if I want to put who submitted this, I can make it so that it's a lookup from 365. If I'm connecting to Office 365, I can do a lookup to look through my directory and find name. For this super simple purpose, I'll actually just let's think. We'll just do a manual entry, but you can do, like I said, you can do the input and select. Just want to make sure I say the right one. A list box, and you can connect it to 365 so that you get your directory of people, and then that would fill in the name and email. I'm going to actually just use email for now. And so if I was an IT person manually entering this in, I would just enter that person's email for who submitted it. And the reason is because if I'm creating a ticket because Amber messaged me on Teams instead of the help email, I'd want to put submitted by Amber so that they know that's who it came from. It just helps with tracking and knowing where requests come from and the workload. So I'm actually going to switch around this form. Instead of showing name, I'm going to do submitted by email. Remove that name. The basic, just changing the border, changing the font, changing the color. I will do a video on how I kind of set up these design systems ahead of time so that I'm not like manually doing everything over and over again. So do stay on the lookout for that. Submitted by email. This to be 11 size font. Now this is 49. All right, and then my attachments, I'll just go ahead and make this the width of the form. And I'm going to use, let's see, what's the size I went with? I went with 128 height. This was height 72. I'm going to do the same size. So I wouldn't imagine that there's a lot of attachments. If there's an issue, people are probably usually going to like add a couple. Usual, updating the colors. All right, so submitted attachments. All right, now we're getting to the bottom stuff. What we have is when something's submitted, like I said, if an email's coming in, I use Power Automate to create a record. I would make sure that that created date puts in the month and the day and the year, as we mentioned in the previous videos. In this case, if someone's doing it manually through here instead of through the email trigger, I would want to make sure that submitted date is based on right now, today. So what we'll do is go ahead and factor in that part. I'm going to remove assigned email. Feel it's over here. And now submitted date. Let's lock this. I'm gonna want this to be just a view only. I wouldn't want to make it like an option for people to be able to go in and change when something was submitted by. Like we want it to be true for when it was created. Honestly, I can actually probably I created submitted date because I had to put in a record. I wanted to have like a variation of submitted dates. So now that I'm talking through it, this field is not even needed. I did this so that for this demo, we had a various range of submitted dates, but you would just be using created date, and your submitted month, submitted day, submitted year would be based on those created date numbers. So we would actually just pretend like this submitted date isn't here. This would be created, which is a default SharePoint property that you can't change. So we're going to pretend that that's what that property is. For this form, I'd remove it because there's no need for it to be on here, this submitted date form. So let's just do our little removal. And so if I'm creating this from new, what I'm going to want is submitted month. I'm going to do if form1.mode equals form mode.new to be value month today. Actually, don't need to put value. It'll by default be a value number or a value property. So what I'm saying is if this is in the new form mode, meaning I'm adding a new record, default this to the month. Else, if it's an existing record, it's going to just be this item dot submitted month. So you'll see that 4 shows up. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and do it to the same thing. Just copy it to my day with a few adjustments. So change the month to be day, change the field to be day. Same with year. Change month to year. And then I can just go ahead and hide these. because there's no reason for anyone to have to see them. Now we have completed month, completed day, completed year. So how do we factor this in? What I would want to do is, once IT kind of opens this portion up, they're either going to just view it and close it or make an update and save those changes. So I'm going to add those buttons and then I'll show you how we'll update the completed fields. So do button and we'll call this update. Font size 11, border radius 4, border 0, fill, that cool little blue, hover, change this to button 2, dot fill. All right. So what I'm envisioning here is they're gonna, if they make a change, they can go ahead and hit update. If they don't make any changes and just want to close out of here, we'll have now a, let's just say like cancel button. So let's call this cancel. Now we have 2 buttons. We've got basically a positive interaction, which is the update, and then the negative being cancel. This is the primary, this is the secondary. I'm looking more for people to hit update versus cancel. What I'll do is just make this size, it can be smaller. Head over here. I'm going to make the color that blue for the font, and then there's going to be no fill, because I want emphasis on the update, not the cancel. Whenever you have these kind of like, if you're doing like a save or cancel, or let's say if you have a task tracker and a prompt comes up to add the task or cancel, the positive should always be a primary button where it has that fill, whereas the negative is the secondary button, so there's no background needed. I also don't need this to be that big. Let's play around with, like, let's see, 104, is that too small? There we go. Perfect. So now what we'll want is to, if my IT person comes in here and puts this as completed, thinking, because I didn't really plan this out, this is what we get when we do stuff on the fly and live, but what we can do I got it. So let's walk through the IT person. They're going to open this. If they're making edits to it, chances are it's under new or on hold. So we want to factor in when they change it to completed, but we also don't want to do some kind of variable that just because it says, like if they open a ticket that was already completed, we don't want the completed date to change because they hit save again. So we have to factor out those scenarios. So what I'll do here, I think will be a good solution, is my on change if, actually not this item, let's do, what is this called? Drop down to, if drop down to dot selected dot value equals completed, then update context. We're going to do a variable completed equals today. Just think that through. So if I change it and it's completed, it'll make the variable today. This is my thinking face. All right, update context, variable completed to today, and then else nothing. That's it. So then what I need to factor in is on the form screen property, my onVisible okay, onVisible update context variable completed to gallery active tickets dot selected, just like how my form is. And just as a separate like side note, whenever I have a form that I'm editing triggered from selecting a gallery record, I usually use a global variable to set it that ID number. So if I click on a ticket, I would say set it to that ID number, so that when I come here, the item is actually a lookup based on that global variable. What we're doing here is just making it based off of what's selected. We're doing that just, that's the fast way to do it right now. But always use a global variable, because if there's like a refresh happening, your form is going to change to a different item selected in the gallery. So global variable just helps keep it on what you're selected on. But we're just doing it the cheap, quick ghetto version right now. So dot selected dot, so we have completed day, completed month, and we'll do this. I'm going to make this a date field. So it should actually be year. And then this would be the month. Then this would be the day. And close it. All right, so what I'm doing is, based on the record, if there's a completed date, I want to fill those fields based on what's already entered. If I come in here and change the status to completed, then it's going to update it to be today's date. And so then this unlock, the value will be variable completed. I want this to be month. we'll do this for day. And then for year. So now what we see is an issue. Let me just go ahead and make sure we get that full experience. Go back to this ticket. So now what we see is an issue is because it's blank, we're getting this January 0 in 1900. We don't want that. So now we need to like update this to say so let's do if so what I'm going to say here is that if the year field is blank, the rest are blank, because based on the way the app works, one wouldn't be blank while the others are filled. So I'm going to say if this field for completed year equals blank, then blank. Else, update it to the date that's in there. And we do have an issue, so let's see. Here equals blank, then blank, else, date. I have an issue here, so we have date, close that if, then do the curly brackets, then close. All right, so let's see if it works now. So we still got an issue. So I'm going to change this actually to if is blank, then blank. Oh, actually, sorry, I just realized that wasn't the problem. So it's over here is the problem. What we're going to edit is you have to do if variable completed equals blank, then blank, else month variable completed. Then copy and paste that through. I don't know why this guy does not want me to select these. Let's see, there we go. Switch this to day. Switch this to year. And then now my update button on select will be submit form 1. And then what I want to do is select my form and select my on success, which is if it does save successfully, navigate to the home screen, and I want to uncover so I get kind of that sliding effect. And so now I should be able to do, all right, I open this ticket, I said completed, now it fills it in, hit update, it's over here. So now that ticket was this one here. What we want to do is make sure we do that kind of clear collect again to refresh the data. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go ahead and clear collect. I'm going to copy this and then add it to that form on success so that it refreshes. So I shouldn't see this ticket. So now that ticket's gone. So another thing we can do is with this kind of blank space we have here, I go ahead and just take the font we used here. And let's make this at 24. And make the width 300. The font color black. Actually, let's just make it like 400. So what I'm going to do is if form 1 dot mode equals form mode dot new, then I want it to say new ticket. Else I want it to say gallery active tickets dot title. Dot selected dot title, and do a space. Let's do and space and gallery dot selected ID and close this parentheses. All right, so what I did here is it just adds a little header. I can see new ticket, but if I were to select a ticket opposed to doing a new one, I would see the title of it, but I don't want it to wrap. So let's make sure there's no text wrap, unwrap that. Make this a lot longer. And now I can see. Font size is like super aggressive, so I'm going to take it down. I've been using 11, I'm going to do 14. And I think we can do a semi-bold. Looks nice. And go to the middle, height's 40. Line it up. There we go. And this email is missing, so let's make sure the default is here. So actually email is blank because this is dummy data, so I didn't put emails in, but your email would show up here. And so now we have a nice looking form. I would hide all these. These are just background items. Because I have the extra space, I can make this a little bigger so that it's not as crammed, as well as I don't need that error field, and then just make this a little bigger. And then what I would want to also do is I want to adjust like the title and description so that you'll see if, as we go into display mode, parent display mode, so if it's new, it's going to be new, if it's edit, it's going to be edit, but what I want it to be is title. So if form1.mode equals form mode.new, I want form mode, or I want it to be display mode.edit, else display mode.view. And I would do the same for submitted by. And I would do the same for description. Because I wouldn't want IT to necessarily come back here and change a message. Like there's no need that would ever have to happen. So I want it to be only view only unless this was new. And then cancel. Then here on cancel, I'm going to do the on select to just go navigate to the home screen, and transition I want to be uncover, again to get that sliding effect. And so I can cancel. And so now we have this form in a good place. So I can update, I can cancel, I can create a new ticket, and I can adjust this and makes it nice and easy for IT to make updates if they want. We have the search, we have all these filters. So this is the IT Help Desk app. I hope you guys learned a few things in this. Again, we kept it very simple. We did some kind of shortcuts where we didn't maybe do this all the way as a full app where we're organizing, naming conventions and properly linking everything together and making it responsive. But I hope this helped you guys create something that you feel happy with and that you got a little sense of how to do the design and kind of got my weird process. And hope you guys enjoyed. I'll definitely, there'll be a lot more new videos coming. This, I wanted to just kind of give you guys that kind of raw process of just going through it as a Power App maker. I'll definitely have a lot more videos that are a lot shorter and direct to the point for those looking for kind of some quick updates and tips and tricks. But this was for, anyone just want to get that sense and feel of the thinking process and what it's like to kind of build an app on the fly. So hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll talk to you guys all later. Bye.